Good morning, people of the internet. As you can tell, I'm in the Landrover. So, it's been about 2 weeks since I put out the last video, and also it's been about a week and a bit since it was completed. So I didn't bother recording it. It seems to be okay.
Yep, that's me.
So a bit of foreshadowing going on there. It didn't all go to plan. I will let past Nathan know, carry on about how great it was doing this head gasket swap, and I'll see you in the workshop afterwards. There's certainly one thing I did notice prior to doing this, even though there's no signs of it, I took the head gasket off, it doesn't seem to be using as much water, or any water for that matter, whereas before, I would say every 3 weeks I was putting probably quarter of a litre in. So yeah, I think hopefully it's all right. I have checked it again to make sure that there was no blowing of the gasket or anything, and there didn't seem to be. So, but yeah, it's all okay. And it also, what I have done since putting it all back together is I fitted a boost gauge. So now I can actually see whether the turbo is producing boost, which it is. Unfortunately, it's not a digital gauge, so catching it being an analog gauge and needle, it's quite hard. But I mean, 7 psi I keep seeing anyway, so I think it's supposed to be more than that. I don't actually know. But apart from that, we're back on the road again, which is good because tomorrow is Nottingham's tea on the tailgate at the time we're recording this. So we're looking forward to attending that. Which would be great, really, to be honest. And I've missed using it. I've also missed the fact that this thing is, for a vehicle of its age, is really good on fuel. So using my daily driver MX-5, the turbo MX-5 anyway, that, yeah, I was using about 30-40 pounds of fuel a week. Whereas in this, I'm looking to put that in a month, which is brilliant. So yeah, it's, as much as it was off the road for nearly 2 weeks, it was long overdue. So what I've decided, so I've just took the truck out for a drive. I decided just to try and drive through areas that I know is going to get some traffic, just to get some heat into it, just to make sure everything's okay. And if it was sitting traffic, then I'm fairly confident that it's going to be all right, which is brilliant. Yep, I've sorely missed this this little old truck. Considering I've not even had it a year, I absolutely love it. One thing has happened since putting it back together though, my speedo stopped working, so just getting up to speed. I don't know whether the cables come out from the back of the clutch sticks. I seem to remember when I did the headlamp switch, that was a bit on the loose side, so when I moved the cluster forward it just fell out. I think it's supposed to be clipped, so I will take a look whether it's fell out there or whether it's come off at the gearbox. I don't think it's come off the gearbox, so I'm sure it's bolted down, unless it's got a drive wheel inside. I'm not quite sure with these. All I know is I've got an MGB, it's got a red drive cog wheel that fits inside the gearbox, and they always tend to wear out after decades of use. But I just think the cables fell off. So apart from that, everything else is ticking along swimmingly, which is how I want it. So, yes. And as you can hear, it's as silent as a series Land Rover will ever be. That's the charm. Ask me that when I've done 100 mile at 50 mile an hour. I don't think I'd say the same thing. Now the weather's breaking. I'm glad I did the head gasket now, because we've got big plans for summer, multiple camping trips, multiple car shows. Some of them are a fair whack distance. Say a fair whack distance, about 3 hours away. So I want to try and be as reliable as a 1960s Landrover can be. Thought there'd be more traffic. So this is going to be a relatively short video. Sometimes that helps with the YouTube algorithm, I've noticed. Oh, one thing I have done when I took it to pieces is the front panels that were replaced, they've been painted. And they were painted with two cans from the same place of bronze gold, is it? Bronze gold? Bronze green? Oh, gold. And they were two different shades. So, a little bit annoyed about that, but to be honest, it's an old Landrover. I'm going to be walking all over the wings and everything anyway, so it ultimately will be repainted. We're thinking blue. But before that can happen, that rear tub needs replacing because it's seen some whiskey dents, and when it's been off-roaded prior to me and prior to the previous owner or whoever, it's smashed the... Well then guys, I hope my previous self didn't bore you too much. So, what kind of happened? Well, a couple of days after that video was done, we went to Tea on the Tailgate, which was around about a 50-mile round trip, I believe. Everything was all fine. Drove up there with another friend, had a look around all the trucks and everything, then drove back to my folks, which is about halfway between here and the place where Tea on the Tailgate was, which was Thorsby Hall. Everything was fine until I pulled up and I could smell a whiff of oil, which is an old Land Rover, you're going to get whiffs of oil. Now, this tends to smell of gear oil most of the time, but in this instance, it smelled like engine oil. Now, it's never smelled like engine oil since I've put it together, or even in actual fact since I've had it. So I was a little bit concerned at that point. So we pulled up onto a bit of grass at the folks. I looked around the vehicle, couldn't see anything. Then I noticed some smoke coming from the manifold. Oh, that's not great. Looked down and there was a load of oil. So decided, because I was about 15-20 miles away from here, I thought I'll just have a quick check. Pulled the intake to the turbo, which you probably can't see, there's a corrugated pipe, you'll see in a moment, off, which comes from the obviously air filter, which was on that side, and also is connected to the cyclone. And it was absolutely covered, and I mean covered in engine oil. We're not talking a misting, we are talking a lot of oil. So pulled the intake pipe off the intake manifold, wiped in there, again, and it was caked. I mean, a lot of thick oil in there. So, what happened? If I'm completely honest, this is the reason why you can see tools and stuff, I don't actually know. Theories are thrown around. I thought, oh, maybe when I've done the head gasket, I contaminated it or something, but I've even rewatched the footage back. That thing was clean. I made sure there was no original gasket stuff on there or anything. Do not know. So, at the moment, the theory was it was drawing air through the cyclone, so I made sure the cyclone was clear. In actual fact, that was brand new. I fitted it when I did the cylinder head. So that's, obviously we can rule that one out. But I put the old one back on to be doubly sure, because I know the old one was all right. So this issue of drawing oil in hadn't happened prior to me doing the cylinder head. So at the moment, what we're looking at, which I did do some preliminary work yesterday, is whether the head gasket's gone or whether there's another problem with the vehicle. Whether that be rings gone, don't think so, because she's not smoking a lot. In actual fact, it smokes far less now than it did before. So I wouldn't have thought it would be that, whether there's something else going off. So what a friend said was to take the intake pipe from the cyclone, which goes into the intake and fills up with oil, take it off and run that into a catch can. So that's just been ran into a catch can itself, and maybe it was just me, but it was noticeable. I think it was kind of pressurizing. Well, in my head, I thought it was pressurizing, I would say. But I was getting some real weird leaks around the rocker cover, which I didn't have before. And then after doing a bit of reading and things, it turns out that if you do that, if you take the cyclone pipe off the intake side, it's not reading vacuum, which is supposed to be vacuum. So you're actually putting more pressure on all the seals and the crank and the rear main seal and all that. So in my lack of knowledge on these motors, I would really suggest, but with MX-5s and things, when this kind of stuff happens, it's putting the extra pressure on the weakest area, which to me, we've got rain. To me, that would be the rocker assembly, so all the gaskets with that. So I'm gonna put that back, but I'm gonna leave the catch can on. But there is a few things we can do prior to that. Now, I already have taken out the glow plugs and had a look. One of them was oily, but apparently that's normal really in these engines if it's not firing correctly, and to be honest, they look a bit old. But I've taken those out. I put a compression tester down, and on diesel vehicles, long story short, it's not the compression number unless it's ridiculously low, it's actually the deviation between each of the cylinders, and mainly the two next to each other. Now these engines are buggers for going on number 4, which it did previously, and I ran down and did a warm compression test, and we got 400 psi, 410, 420 and 420, going from 1 to 4 obviously. Did it again, we got pretty much the same numbers. Did it when it was cold, we got 400, 390, 410, 390. There's supposed to be less, I think it's less than a 10%, which is about 70 psi difference in them. We're lucky if we get 2%. Maybe 4%. So I'm not really thinking it's that. The next test I did, which we're actually going to do again, was a cold leak down test. Now, compression tests are great. Leak down tests, you can usually identify whereabouts it is. Now, leak down tests where you pump air, obviously, into the cylinder, have the cylinder at top dead center, or the piston top dead center, and then you just measure the leakage off here. Now, yesterday I did it, but admittedly it was cold. The engine got cold from doing the compression test. We're talking with 10% loss, which was nothing, 2% loss, 5% loss, and 6% loss. A brand new rebuilt engine could have up to 20% loss. So I'm not taking the cold test as gospel. We're going to do it on a hot test because everything expanded going from there. But first what I need to do is get this thing ran up. But before that, I need to get changed again. So I'll be back in a moment and we're going to get changed. Right guys, let me wings closing because it's pretty cold in here. We'll get this thing fired up and warmed up, but I'll prep the door a little bit so the air or the fumes can go out. Okay, so she's nice and it's temperature, so now we can start removing the rocker assembly and the glue blocks as well. So slowly removing things out, and we should be ready to go. So that's the glow plugs are out. I've also taken off the rocker cover obviously, so what we'll do now is disconnect the fuel solenoid. That's that off. We'll crank her over, just get any fuel out of those holes, and we're good to go. Right, I'll turn the battery off and we'll get the tester ready. this was for. It's got an adapter on it to fit into the tube, which did have the glow plugs in. Screw it down, doesn't need to be too tight, just as long as it makes a seal. And we'll snap the end off. Lost underneath it. All we do is just nip it up. That's it. Good. Let's get your cylinder you're going to test to top the centre. Now, let's move the camera over. So I'm gonna I would say that's too tight. So neat. And there she is. You've got the air going in, which is, I think this towards a low pressure one, so about 45 to 100 psi going in off your compressor. And then what you need to do is set your gauge to 0, which is your leak down. Once you've set that, you can lock it off with this locking tab, just there. And then plug that into the cylinder and listen for the leaks. Now in theory, even a rebuilt engine would be between 0 and 40. It shouldn't be any more. Now if you've got it wrong, as in you've not got top dead center, this will read really low, like in the 80s. So you'll know you just need to make sure your piston's at top dead center. So what we'll do is we'll get this fired in, connected in, should I say. Right, so as you can see, mine's slightly off. I believe, yeah, just let the air out a bit. There we go, and then lock her in. Pushed it. Do it. Come on. Close to 0 as possible. Right, and connects to the cylinder. Right, now that was literally about 5%. Just want to make sure we've got the piston at top dead centre. I think we have, I think it's moved it. Yeah, here now, top dead centre. I mean, that's suggesting about 5. Let's make sure again. Getting about 15% leakage. 15% is well within tolerance. Do 3. 5% loss. At 4. I've just checked the valves and whether they're all within spec. The gap. Hey, you've got mine freaking own. change the radiator on it. Anyway, let's see. Why did that move? So that one was around about 10% as well. Okay, so now we need to go on to 2. Cylinder 3 is at 10% loss, so it's not that. Could this all be in my head? Could we have overfilled the oil? Don't think so. Fairly sure the only thing we can do now is I'm not hearing any air coming out of anything. At least not at a loss that it's going to have. Apart from the compressor. We'll wait for that to turn on. Right, before I was rudely interrupted by the compressor. I think the only thing we can do now, because I've done a compression test, compression figures are perfect. She's showing signs of an absolutely perfect motor. But it's just it filled the intake. I'm not getting loads of smoke though, where you would usually get that with the cylinders down. I don't know. I really don't know now. I was hoping that was going to give me some sort of answer that yeah, I'm going to take the cylinder off or something. Unless it's the start of the problem, and I'm not going to know until it fully manifests itself. I don't know what to do. Hey guys, I'm just going to put it back together and use it. There's not much more I can do. I mean, I've done pretty much all the tests, unless there's some sort of crack in the block somewhere. But why didn't it show up prior? Surely if there was any head torquing issues which are then causing gases to then pressurise the oil system, which again isn't being shown because I'm not getting smoke, which would happen, but if that was happening, the leak down or the compression tester would have picked up something. So certainly by not running the pipe from the cyclone to the intake, that needs to see vacuum, and I'm getting it's leaking oil everywhere, so I'd sooner it be going to one place where I can keep an eye on it than it going to literally everywhere else. What I don't want to do is we'll go to the intake again, so hence why I'm going to run the catch can probably over a couple of weeks, just see what's happening, just keep checking it, which to be honest is what I do anyway. I don't not check it, it's at least a weekly check. It's not a vehicle, I check all of these. So right, that's where I'm going to sign off, but obviously if you've got any answers as to why, if you've watched the previous video, I've done the head gasket, done compression test now, I've done a leak down test, everything's fine. If there's something I've missed, then obviously please let me know, and we'll investigate another video. But for now, I think we'll sign off. Obviously, if you've liked the video, hit that subscribe, like, share. Obviously, we just hit over 1,000 subs, which is fantastic for us. So, we're obviously not monetized or anything like that, which is fine. I'm not doing this to be monetized. I'm just doing this as a documentation for my stuff. And if I'm learning something along the way, you might be learning something along the way. And obviously, it's all helps, doesn't it? So, anyway, I shall see you in the next one.